Which prop bets should you make before the 2025 NFL Draft? Welcome, football fans, to my best bets of the 2025 NFL Draft. I think the draft is one of the most underrated places and events to make money on the NFL. Let's break down my favorite prop bets. Gronk, spike the like button, don't be a jabroni, and subscribe for coverage of all 32 NFL teams and NFL best bets all year long. Comment if you have a best bet of your own. Let's kick it off with probably my favorite bet for the NFL draft. That is under 2.5 quarterbacks taken in the first round of this year's NFL draft. That is listed at minus 105. In my opinion, Cam Ward is the only first-round quality quarterback. And I could see Cam Ward being the only quarterback taken in the first round. So if 2.5 is the number, that means that another quarterback, such as Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart, or maybe even Tyler Shuck, could be selected in the first round, and you would still go under 2.5 at near even money. This is a great bet because when you break it down, the Titans are taking Cam Ward. That's one. That's a lock. After that, the Giants aren't picking Sanders at 3. Forget about it. At number 9, the Saints, I think, are unlikely to take a quarterback because it appears that Dart they like more than Sanders. That's what it appears. And I think it's a little too rich for the Saints to pick Dart at number 9. Now, maybe they move back in the draft and they get extra assets and they pick Dart later on, right? Maybe number 20, something like that. Trade with somebody later in the draft, okay? So maybe that's where the second one comes in. But otherwise, we're talking about who's going to pick a quarterback. If the Saints pass and they pick Michael Williams, or they pick Will Johnson, or they pick an offensive lineman, which they need all of those things, who's picking a quarterback? The Steelers? Because the Steelers are not certainly taking a quarterback. Maybe they'd consider Sanders. But it feels like defensive lineman or maybe even running back could be the choice if Aaron Rodgers is going to be their quarterback. So I think the Saints or the Steelers could pick a quarterback, but I don't think both will. I think neither is more likely than both. And then maybe a team such as the Browns who pick first in the second round, the Giants who pick second in the first or in the second round, maybe they pop into the first and they take a quarterback. Maybe, right? Maybe. But I don't think it's that likely. So I like this bet. Minus 105, under 2.5 quarterbacks taken in the first round. I don't think this is a great quarterback class. The NFL is telling us that. And that's why I would make this my favorite bet of the draft. Next, let's get to some specific player fits for some of the top prospects. So first, we have T-Mac. All right? McMillan to Jacksonville is going to be the bet at plus 500. This has been a recent storm, a recent rise for T-Mac, who I think is a great wide receiver prospect, who I think is a ready-made X receiver in the NFL, right? Smooth, big, great hands, contested catch artist. He would be great on the other side of Brian Thomas. And why I think this is likely. We have heard absolutely zero buzz about Mason Graham to Jacksonville. Everybody keeps saying Mason Graham to Jacksonville, but there's no real buzz. The only connection is that the general manager is from the Rams and they like Aaron Donald and Fisk and whatever. But the Rams actually were always a wide receiver weaponry team in the draft. And that's how they built the team around Jared Goff, right? Then you look at Liam Cohen, who's a wide receiver coach, a quarterback coach, an offensive coordinator, and he comes from Tampa Bay, where a wide receiver like Mike Evans resigns. Mike Evans and McMillan are not too far off in their measurables and abilities. Now, I'm not saying McMillan's the next Evans, but I'm saying he could be very good in the same lane. The size, the hands, the vertical ability despite not being burners themselves, right? And if you're thinking about what should Jacksonville do to truly uplift their team to the next level, a D tackle would help them. But a wide receiver that could be another number one wide receiver that could complement Brian Thomas, that could catapult them, right? And Liam Cohen having multiple weapons for Trevor Lawrence, you want to capitalize on Cohen's offense and you want to support Trevor Lawrence. That is number one for this team right now. So to me, it makes sense, and it's a great bet at plus 500. It's an absolutely phenomenal bet at plus 500. So not a lot of people see this one coming, but I think it's a good bet. Ashton Jeanty to the Chicago Bears is plus 400. Jeanty could last to number 10. In that case, he'll get picked by the Chicago Bears. He could be the Jahmyr Gibbs for Ben Johnson in Chicago, a difference-making, explosive running back who can't be tackled. He very well might be a top 5 running back in the NFL for the next 8 years, right? This guy is a special prospect. I have not seen a pinball quite like Ashton Jeanty. He's the cherry on top of an already very good offense and very good roster. Plus, you want to keep that pressure off of Caleb by running the ball, but you need a running back to give the ball to. DeAndre Swift is not that guy for me, for Ben Johnson, who comes from Detroit, who got rid of DeAndre Swift. So Ashton Jeanty, the Bears could trade up for him to number 4 with New England, number 5 to Jacksonville, number 6 to the Raiders, maybe probably not number 6 to trade, but probably number 5 or number 4, or potentially, number 7, right? Like, they could make a slight move up to get Jeanty, okay? And in combination with that, Chicago drafting Jeanty, and again, I'm not saying number 10, I'm saying just in general, because they could trade up for him. There is steam that Jeanty is going to be going a little bit higher than people think because a trade may be happening, because he's that special, right? He's the best playmaker in a draft that doesn't have a lot of playmakers, okay? You have the Raiders. So in couple with Jeanty to the Bears, you've got Membou going 6th overall, exactly 6th overall to the Raiders, plus 250. Now, this makes a lot of sense the more that you dig in. The Raiders could be interested in McMillan. They could be interested in Jeanty. Those are both needs. They could be interested in Will Johnson. That's also a need. Will Johnson has some concerns about his medicals, which I think will lessen that pick. I also feel like Jeanty is not going to be the pick for the Raiders now because this is a front office of the Raiders that comes from Tampa Bay, who just picked Bucky Irving late in the draft, and he was a superstar, right? Spy Tech is not oblivious to what Jason Light just did. Tom Brady, as a guy in New England and in Tampa Bay, never really was built around a great running back. He never had a great running back, right? He doesn't believe in that. He was from the school of thought of committee backs, right? And so the team that's building this team is used to having committee backs. And it's in a draft that has a lot of really good running backs that you could get later in the draft, right? So with all their needs that they have, looking at right tackle, DJ Glaze is fine, but he's not phenomenal. And he wasn't drafted by this front office. Plus, Colton Miller is in a contract dispute potentially. He could be moved. He's been in trade rumors. So what does that suggest? Colton Miller could be on the move because they're going to pick a tackle. Or Colton Miller being potentially on the trade block would open up the Raiders to picking a tackle. Membou is also kind of like Tristan Wirfs. Great movement skills, right? You look at the RAS score, the relative athletic score, his movement, his size, being that he's a right tackle. He's a lot like Tristan Wirfs. He could move to the left later in his career to replace Kolton Miller, but he could start at right away. So there's a lot of similarities there for this front office. So at 250, plus 250, I think it is a great value at Membou going 6th overall. I think it's more likely than Jeanty at this point because I think Jeanty could go earlier than that or he could slide to the Bears. The Falcons. Now, this one is not a great number. It's listed at minus 325, so you have to put some money on it, but it's pretty much as close to a lock of a bet as you can get. The Falcons taking a defensive lineman or an edge. Either position. This is pretty much a lock, in my opinion. A lot of people thought that this would be the pick for the Falcons last year, but they went out of their way with Michael Penix. They're not going to do that 2 years in a row, right? They need a pass rush desperately. Their best pass rusher is old man Leonard Floyd. Their interior defensive line is also a bit weaker now because Grady Jarrett did leave in free agency. So either way, whether it be an edge, which is far more likely, or a defensive lineman, both are going to be available at 15. Mike Green, Shamar Stewart, Mykel Williams, one of these guys will be available at 15, very, very likely. And then a Kenneth Grant could be available as well. A Walter Nolan. So whoever they want to go with, they have options. They need a pass rush. The Falcons struggle to get to the quarterback, and Raheem Morris is a defensive coach. So this is one of those that you put like $1,000 on it, and you're gonna win money. Like honestly, so yeah, to me, this is a for sure. If I had to say that anything was for sure in betting. Over 2.5 running backs in the first round is not a for sure, but I like the price at plus 200. Ashton Jeanty is a lock. I think Hampton is close to a lock. And I think Henderson is also going to be beloved by the NFL. In a draft that is relatively weak, a lot of people believe that. You know, this is a really strong running back class with a weak draft class. We're coming off a season where Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs, right, transform their offenses and their teams. So why wouldn't the NFL correspond and take some running backs in the first round? The place that I think Denver could pick Henderson. I wouldn't be that surprised because Sean Payton likes Ohio State products like Michael Thomas, and Henderson is explosive. He's the best pass blocker in this class, and he's also maybe the best receiver at this position, which is a really good combination for Sean Payton, right? And Sean Payton's also a committee back approach. Henderson is more of a committee back because he's not a guy that takes 20 carries, but when he gets them, he's kind of like Aaron Jones, super explosive, right? So this could be his Alvin Kamara type of pick. I could see Hampton going really, to Dallas, to Chicago, to Pittsburgh, I think Washington could pick a running back. I think there's quite a few different teams that could take a running back because maybe they just want a good player in the first round in a draft that doesn't have a lot of good players, to be honest. So plus 200 is a good bet over 2.5 running backs. The Lions at plus 225 to pick an offensive lineman. I like this because it's not the favorite. It's, edge is the favorite. Defensive lineman edge is the favorite. At plus 225, the Lions have a screaming need at right guard. And there should be some right guards available there. Donovan Jackson feels like a name that could go to the Lions because he has that versatility, that physicality, power, and anchor that the Lions look for, the good size, right? And it's the identity of the Lions. They lost Kevin Zeitler. They want to reform that identity. They want to be able to overpower you and put you into the dirt. And to me, that's the Lions bite your kneecap style. It's not their defensive line. It's their offensive line, especially post Ben Johnson. They want that, right? They want to be able to run the ball at will with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And given that they won't have the same creativity offensively, they might need to be able to do that. So offensive linemen in the first round, whether it be Jackson, Booker, Zabel, whoever's available at that time, I feel like there will be someone available for them to take. Now, defensive line could happen because there could be guys there. But some of them have character concerns, like Pierce. And the Lions don't take guys with character concerns. Okay, so maybe they go off the board a little bit, but at plus 225, again, it's a really good price. I love the Niners plus 155 to pick a defensive lineman or an edge at 11 because there's going to be so many options for Robert Saleh's defense. This is easily the weakest area of the Niners team, and I am basically a Niners fan. They're my second favorite team, so I pay attention to them very closely. So they are weak at defensive tackle, and they're weak at defensive end. Their offensive line could use a guard, and it could use a center, but the guys that are most likely to be there that you would pick at 11 are tackles. Now, that being said, could they pick a Banks or could they pick a Membou if he slides there? I don't think he'll be available. So really Banks. Could they pick him at 11? It's possible for the long-term security of Trent Williams and the guard ability early on. But there's going to be so many options for them to choose from at 11 as well on the defensive line. When you're talking about Mason Graham could slide there if McMillan goes at number 5. Right? Mike Green will be available, who's an excellent pass rusher. Shamar Stewart could be available. Michael Williams could be available. Grant will be available. Nolan will be available. So all these different names to choose from. I mean, that's like 8 guys compared to maybe 1 in Banks, you know? That would really be considered at that spot. They're not going to be taking a guard at number 11. And they have always put defensive line above offensive line. So this to me is worth the bet for sure. Especially if Mason Graham slides. I think he would be their pick for sure. So San Francisco plus 155 to pick a defensive lineman or an edge. Then our final bet of the NFL draft is the Colts going offensive line with their first pick. That's plus 310. The Colts might choose to trade back from number 14 if Tyler Warren goes early. And I think the Colts are kind of known under Chris Ballard for taking offensive linemen. They lost multiple offensive linemen this offseason to the Vikings, both to the Vikings, their center, Kelly, and then their guard as well. So they could go guard or interior offensive line early in the first round. They could go with a Zabel, for example, at number 14. They could even choose to trade back with somebody and then pick one a little bit later on. Now, if Warren is gone, Loveland could also be the pick. I just don't know if he quite fits the Colts mold quite as well. But, given that tight end is such a strong favorite, you're getting plus 310. I think the Colts are most likely to take an offensive lineman out of all the positions that are not tight end. Right? And I think that's a really good price given the history of what the Colts have built their team on, which is line of scrimmage play. And they don't need defensive linemen. So they might look at tight end and say, we don't really need a tight end. We'll get him in the second or third round. We'll pick our offensive lineman now. We'll eat our potatoes. We'll eat our beef right now with a Gray Zabel and beef up our guard position and complement Quentin Nelson, right? So that's, in my opinion, the best bets of the NFL draft, at least for mostly the first round. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget, don't be a jabroni. Subscribe. It's Mitch. Peace.